A federal judge on Friday held Rudy Giuliani in civil contempt for skirting an agreement not to make new false claims about two Georgia election workers he was ordered to pay $146 million for defaming. It was the second time in less than a week a judge found Giuliani in contempt in matters involving the case. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell granted the request from Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, whom Giuliani has falsely claimed for years engaged in mass election fraud while working in Atlanta on election night in 2020. The agreement barred the ex-New York City mayor from making any further claims they engaged in wrongdoing during the election. The mother-daughter duo said he violated it in two broadcasts of his nightly show. The judge determined that Giuliani violated the order he agreed to in at least 6 ways, calling his accusations that the women engaged in election crimes the worst kind of defamation. This takes real chutzpah, Mr. Giuliani, Howell said while reading her order. The judge gave Giuliani 10 days to submit a filing under oath affirming he reviewed the record of the case and the Georgia report, which concluded all allegations against Freeman and Moss were unsubstantiated. He must also acknowledge his statement contradict those feelings, and he must acknowledge that he had the opportunity to fully participate in the case. He'll be fined $200 every day after a deadline if he fails to comply, she said. If after 30 days he continues to make false statements about the women, Howell suggested she may consider more serious penalties like jail time. I am very concerned based on the statements made during this hearing that Mr. Giuliani may not be persuaded to stop making statements that violate the consent judgment in this case without even more serious sanctions, Howell said. Giuliani spokesperson Ted Goodman said in a statement that the contempt ruling was designed to prevent Mayor Giuliani from exercising his constitutional rights, claiming that he was not given the opportunity to defend himself on the facts during the defamation case, which lawyers for Freeman and Moss and the judge dispute. Howell, during a federal court hearing in Washington, D.C., began the hearing by ripping into Giuliani for continuing to defame Freeman and Moss, criticizing him for spreading fabricated lies given his expansive public audience and respected public service history. I really hoped we were done, Howell said. Giuliani immediately rebuffed the judge's remarks, shaking his head and scoffing at the defense table as she spoke. He also talked back to the judge from his seat, though his commentary was not audible. At issue are two remarks Giuliani made on November 12th and 14th, where he claimed that they never let me show the tapes that showed them quadruple counting the ballots, and that his tapes showed them passing these little hard drives that we maintain were used to fix the machines. An attorney for Freeman and Moss said Giuliani was unambiguously referring to them. It's impossible to believe that there's some other reference he's making to some other people out there in the world other than our clients, said attorney Michael Gottlieb. Gottlieb added 2 other examples Friday he said constitute additional defamation from November 19th and 21st statements on Giuliani's show. This goes a little bit longer. I had no idea that Giuliani even had a show. Like, the only thing I've heard of him over the past couple of years really has just been when he gets in trouble for running his mouth. But I thought that was having to do with tweets and, just general public appearances on like Fox and stuff like that. I couldn't imagine like actually listening to him for just half an hour. His judge is saying that it's violating of his constitutional rights, but really what you have here is a pretty serious allegation against workers that they damaged or purposefully harmed democracy by changing votes, which he has shown no proof of. And this is something that is extremely dangerous, as we've seen that there are people who, depending on what person they support for office, will make threats and, try to like retaliate against someone who they perceive to have hurt their candidate. So he is doing something that can be argued as hurting them. He's not exposing some hidden secret with proof. He's just running his mouth for his leader. And now that Trump is starting his second term, and was that less than 2 weeks, there is a serious possibility that he might get a pardon. But like, imagine, and this is just like another one of those things about like the difference between rich people and poor people. Imagine being fined $200 every day. Like, we talk about how most people in the U.S. can't afford $1,000 emergency. Imagine having to pay $1,000 every 5 days on top of having to pay for all the other stuff that you might need to survive. It's really crazy, but it's also like showing of his privilege that he can basically piss out all that money over running his mouth. All he has to do is just shut up about the election. You know, like I thought for a second when Republicans won this time around that at the very least we would see the crybaby stuff with 2020 finally be over, right? We won anyway 4 years later, so what difference does it make? But no, they're still. I mean, they said his statements from November. So even as they were getting ready to retake the White House and supposedly right the wrongs of the 2020 election, he's still talking about 2020. Like, move on. But because he couldn't move on, he's having to pay out a whole bunch of money. And all I can say is I hope that none of the... Because the problem with these people is they just believe anything their public figures say. I really hope no one tries to do anything to those election workers, because they're being gone after for the dumbest reason ever, which is one man lost an election and then a bunch of his sycophants go around, Giuliani included, pretending that it was stolen with no evidence. But the biggest revelation from this is that Giuliani has a show. Hey, on behalf of him, you have my condolences for anyone that had to sit through that. I couldn't imagine just... Welcome to the Rudy Giuliani show. Oh, God.